version of personal experience of God is to say that God answers my prayers. Well, again, not much I can say here except what does basic probability tell us? Let's say, for example, I fall in love with someone and I want her to love me back. Now, this happened to me in 5th grade. In 5th grade, I fell in love with a girl. Terry Mellon was her name, and I just thought she was the most special person I'd ever met, a very special 5th grader. And so for the next 3 days and 3 nights, I prayed to God. And I said to God, please, God, make Terry Mellon love me. And if you do, I promise I will believe in you for the rest of my life. And on the 4th day, I went to school, and she came up to me, and she handed me a note and 3 pieces of bubble gum. And on the note, it said, I really like you. And I thought to myself, oh no, does this mean I have to believe in God? But I later found out that she had given notes and gum to 2 other boys that same day. So I decided the deal was off. But the important point here is that if an event has, let's say, a 25% chance of happening without divine intervention, and I pray to God for help, and 75% of the time it doesn't happen, and 25% of the time it does, and I ascribe the times that it does happen to God every time, no wonder that I believe.
First of all, I think that there is a uniqueness to the Christian claims that actually differentiates it from essentially all other religions, and I wouldn't want to go into, I wouldn't want to take the time to go into that in great detail. But certainly, it is certainly the case that the claim of the resurrection is a claim which is essentially unique. And it's not the same as my statue cried or my 5th grade sweetheart gave me bubble. Sorry about that. Sorry. But actually, I was intrigued by your recounting that story, and I would guess, and I have a story like that too. I have a story as a child of praying for something that was important to me. In my case, well, in your case, you received it, okay, which is rather interesting. In my case, I didn't receive it, and that convinced me that God did not exist. And so, I lived out my youth as a confirmed atheist. I didn't come from a religious background. But I think in both of these cases, what this shows is that personal miracles have a hard time persuading people to live out their lives consistently. And I think your story kind of demonstrated that too. And maybe mine demonstrates it also in the sense in that I'm not consistently an atheist either.
Professor Adams, what would it require for you to move from your position to a belief in God, or perhaps all the way to Professor Hutchinson's position of being a Christian? And Professor Hutchinson, what would it take for you to no longer be a Christian, and perhaps even to move as far as Professor Adams and to actually be an atheist? So what would that take? And also, in that, if you'd like to make one kind of summary closing point before we have these guys come up to close us.
Okay. Is that okay if I go first here? Yeah. Okay. So I think I already explained in my talk earlier that there are things that could convince me otherwise. That I like to think of myself as a logical person. I like to think that the beliefs that I have are based on evidence, or based on logically applying rules to that set of evidence, and then coming to conclusions based on that. So there are situations I can imagine, and I mentioned some of them before, if there were actually studies coming out, and they'd have to be very convincing studies, and there'd have to be a lot of them, but studies coming out that demonstrated the efficacy of prayer, that would really get me thinking very seriously. And if it turned out, as I mentioned before, that Christians somehow, their prayers were answered all the time and nobody else's were, that would be another reason why I would suddenly think, gee, maybe this Christianity thing has something going for it, and I would take it very seriously. But I don't expect that's going to happen. I hope I remain open-minded, and I want to continue discussions with people here, and I really have enjoyed talking with Professor Hutchinson about this, and I do understand, you know, why you feel the way you do, and I understand that people can have different perspectives, and I've enjoyed tonight. So thanks.
Yeah, I likewise think it would be most unlikely. Okay, but I do think that if, I mean, there's a simple answer to the question. If by some strange manner extremely convincing evidence came to light, or someone talked about a time machine earlier, if a time machine became available whereby we could go back to the 1st century and it demonstrated unequivocally, you know, that no, Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you know, he was still in the tomb, or yeah, the disciples stole him away, or whatever it was, you know, that would be sufficient. That's my answer to your question. I'd like to also echo the remarks of Professor Adams. I've enjoyed being with you all very much. I think a civil discussion like this is extremely valuable. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I just want to thank you very much for the privilege of being with you. Thank you very much.
For more information about the Veritas Forum, including additional recordings and a calendar of upcoming events, please visit our website at veritas.org.